Once you have worked and determined kind of how you are designing within the room, you then move to designing beyond that. So, taking multiple rooms and making it into a larger space. Um, your room's really your basic block as you start from it. And then, so what we're going to talk about this week is then how do you continue using those design principles we've talked about with the room to larger spaces? How do those spaces relate to each other? And then how open or closed should they be? Should they be next to each other? All of that goes into taking, the design for a living room or a dining room, and how do you put those things together into a house or an office space. So at times you'll have large single spaces. These can be tricky to space plan if you don't understand kind of how to break them down into smaller spaces. They're typically not divided into rooms by walls or doorways or anything like that, but you can divide them into spaces or zones, and that's what helps it make it more manageable to work through. Hotel lobbies are a really good example of this. So, for example, this picture that you see here, you have a bar section that's here. You have several seating zones or spaces that are throughout. And then they also have the corridors that run through it, similar as if you had enclosed spaces between that. So, this helps you create unique spaces throughout and also makes a large space feel more human sized to the occupant. So keeping things to keep in mind as you get beyond the room are like spatial affinities. So simply put, these are spaces that almost always occur next to each other. So kitchens and dining rooms, master bedrooms and master bathrooms, receptions and waiting areas. Typically, these are driven by function. So, what does something need next to each other to work well? So, again, your dining room functions best next to the kitchen. So, there's an easy way to get the food from one space to the next. Um, your waiting room functions best next to the reception. So, people can move easily between it. The receptionist can see everyone, all of that as it goes through. As you are working in larger spaces and you don't just have individual rooms, the question comes up of how can you divide the space? Um, and the way that you choose to divide it really is a great place to elevate your design and to make it stand out. If you just use walls and doors for everything, it's going to be very static. It can also get in the way of spatial affinities where things need to move easily between two spaces, and it closes it off in general as you go through. So here are a few examples. Your book will give you more to go through, but you can look at examples like partial height walls. So you have a seating area down here. There's a partial height wall behind this sofa, and then above it, you have another area. The other thing going on in this illustration right here is level change. So you've got a lower area here, a few steps up, and another space up here, whether it's seating, dining, or not. But so these are open to each other. People can easily move and see, but those items make it feel like two separate spaces. Another one is floating architectural elements. So whether it's a fireplace like you see here, whether it's a built-in bookcase, um, there's a lot of different things, a column that you've built off of. But this again, you can see between the spaces, there's not a wall, but it creates two distinct areas as you're looking at it. And then finally, up here, you have a wall segment as part of it. So this is not a full wall that's closing off the kitchen, but it comes out partially, so it blocks part of it. It also helps support probably upper cabinets on the other side and a refrigerator on the other side, gives room for artwork on this side, and creates that division, as well as cabinetry. So this lower cabinetry here helps create a division between the seating and the dining room here. Same thing, you've got cabinetry extending from the kitchen that helps divide the kitchen from the dining room. These are both very functional pieces that can be used, but it also helps create a sense of space through it. Floating walls are a great way to create space. So they don't have to be connected. Um, and there's lots of different shapes and variety with this. So you can have an L shaped floating wall. It can be just straight, it can be straight with wing walls. Fireplaces are a good starting point for this. And you can take the fireplace similar to the floating one that you see here, and then you can expand on it. So you could add a built in shelf next to it. You could have built in seating. You could have a closet, all of that. And we'll talk more about thick walls. So these are great for division and function. And we'll look at some examples here. So, for example, this L shaped right here is a floating wall. It has cabinetry with it as well. Right here is indicating kind of an opening into the space. You also have a floating wall here that's going on. This is a fireplace, and then they have something built in next to it. This could be seating, it could be a bookshelf, anything like that. On option B, you have just a straight floating wall here, so no attachments, but it does help give division. It's also good. These help with things like placing furniture where you need an anchoring spot to it as it goes through. And then down here, right here, you've got a large floating wall with some thick walls going on. Most likely, there's a fireplace in here as a starting point, and then they've added on. You've got a powder bath down here. This could be a built in china cabinet here. You could have a closet on this side, bookshelves here. So, all of that creates a very functional space that helps divide the two as you go through it. All right, and then here are 5 ways, there are more, but here's 5 ways that you can create two spaces in one large area. So in here, you can protrude out. So you can bump out a wall to create a smaller space off of a large space. So A is a large space, and then so you could have your main living room here, and maybe B is a smaller seating area. You can add a floating wall or a side attached wall. So here you've got a floating wall here that allows you to have A and B within the large open space. You can add a floating mass. So whether it's cabinetry, shelving, counters, etc. So this is not just a wall. This is going to be a functional piece. And again, it could be built-in bookshelves, it could be cabinetry, anything like that that helps divide the spaces. Additionally, you can make it larger and add a floating room or section of rooms. So maybe this is a half bath and a closet that divides the two. Um, in an office environment, this could be a row of small phone rooms or meeting rooms that divide the two different spaces. And then lastly, for the examples in your book, you can add a turn to offset the two spaces. So you have, it's still one big area, there's no walls or doors, but because of the way it's laid out, this space functions as space B and this functions as space A.